presentation is by Glenn Holland, who is the CEO of Human Connection. So, Glenn.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right, so real quick before we get started, I'm going to take a selfie going that way, so I can prove that I was actually here. In all honesty, this is the first time. I mean, I've done lots of presentations in the past, but never on this level at a university. So I got to say thank you to Buck Hales. You know, seeing him in one of my pictures that Jose put up of my device, I was just like floored. So, you know, the opportunity for me to be here is just, thank you so much. Okay, so vibration controlled agriculture, a new method for an old input in CEA and sustainable agriculture. So if you think about it, vibration's been around since the beginning, right? I mean, even when the Earth's crust was first forming and there's volcanoes out there, they're vibrating that crust, which we don't know, I mean, who knows exactly how life started, but I can almost guarantee that vibration had a part of it. So I consider myself to be a tool, and I'm a tool of good vibes. And I'm giving you those good vibes right now. I am transferring my energy, my vibrations to you. So a lot of this presentation will be about my story first, and then we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts of actually the product itself. Okay, so that's the way I like to roll. Okay, we all know this guy, right? I mean, everything in life is vibration. You can't do anything in this world without vibration. Now, you can't, you know, some say you can't create energy, and you can't. There's a finite amount of energy, but transferring that energy from one place to another, that's what vibration does. That is what vibration does, right? So he was a pretty smart guy, right? So it all starts with a seed, right? Out of all these presentations, I don't think I saw one of a seed, so I was like, I picked a good picture. Yeah, this is one of my seeds that I popped not too recently, and it's part of my testing that I've been doing for the past 5 years. And we're gonna go back. So this is me in 1970. That's my father, and that's me in some dirt, and that's me in, I think I look like him, I think that's me. But I was born in 1970. I was adopted by a family in New Jersey from an unwed mother's home in Florida, which basically is a black market baby factory, if you want to call it that. So yeah, 1970, that's how I started off. I lived in New Jersey. My parents lived in a very affluent part of New Jersey, Montclair. This is the East Coast, this is not the West Coast. During my early years, I heard the song Good Vibes, Good Vibrations. And I heard it on this album, and it was 1975. So I was 5 years old. It was one of the first albums I ever bought. Yes, I did start out with one of those Fisher-Price record players with little holes in it, and like ding, 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 ding. We evolved, right? We evolved. So yeah, that was my first kind of introduction to good vibrations, was in 1975. For the rest of that time, I lived with my parents. My parents, I said, were adopted, and this is what they did every day. Every day, they smoked 2.5 packs of Winston each. Every day, my mom would drink 8 or 9 Budweisers every day, and my father would drink a liter of Pop-Off vodka. You saw how big and tall he was. So this is what I lived with, you know, without anybody telling me, hey, you shouldn't do that, we're not gonna smoke in the house, all those kinds of things, right? I wasn't told not to do that. So when I'm 13 years old, I'm like, well, I'm gonna do that. So I started smoking, I started drinking, 13 years old. Well, to me, that's the gateway drug right there. I don't care what anybody says, but of course in 1985, I was introduced to cannabis, right? So 15 years old, yeah, it was the summer right before freshman year. You know, a really good friend of mine introduced me to marijuana, and this was actually the first year that I actually popped a seed. So it wasn't as successful. East Coast, not West Coast. High Times magazine, that's the only thing I got to look at, right? It's 1985, before the internet. So I failed and failed and failed and failed and failed. And basically just said, you know, enough is kind of enough. I'm gonna just go my own route. But from 1985 until 1993, or sorry, 1985, 1993, I found everything in my means possible to get high, get drunk, not go to school. I was snorting cocaine, I was doing LSD, I was smoking crack, I was doing all those things, and they were right outside New York City. You know, I mean, I got on a train and went over there in Washington Square Park, and that's what we did, right? But then in 1993, Dad passed. And I met her, excuse me. And I met her, my wife, a few days afterwards. So my dad passed, I was 23 years old, met her, she changed everything. From 1993 until this time, everything was hunky-dory. And yeah, that may look bad, and I wanted it to look bad, because I wanted to shove it down your throat, so that when this happens, when you cough this up, because I coughed that up one day, that's like death, right? I mean, you see this in the movies, you cough up blood, your time is limited, right? So that's what started it for me, 6-inch piece of blood. Yes, I saw it in the garbage can when I spit it out, I took it out of there, took a picture of it, called my doctor, said, well, something's wrong here. Doc wasn't in. He had a nurse practitioner subbing in for him. You want to guess what her name was?
Florence.
Mary Jane. I'm not kidding you. Total serious. Her name was Mary Jane, okay? But I knew right away after she listened to me, she's like, you know, something's up here, you know? But that starts the rat hole. That starts the rat hole down. What happens when this happens? You know, you're on the computer, you're searching for stuff, you're going crazy, just, you know, is this cancer, is it not cancer? First oncologist I went to said, wait 6 weeks, I think it's a fungal infection. I'm like, fuck you, I'm not gonna wait 6 weeks. I'm not gonna do that. So I went to 3 other opinions, finally got to Duke, and Duke had an immunotherapy trial going on, clinical trial going on. And yeah, so they looked at me up and down and said, you're a perfect candidate. So yeah, there's Nurse Mary Jane, first biopsy, they poked me from the back. I was learning about biopsies, when you're poking slumbering giant, what happens. This guy poked in my back to get a biopsy of the mass that was in my lung, and was inconclusive. So I'm like, man, come on. So yeah, first opinion was fungal, second, got a biopsy, went down through my throat, picked it out, yeah, stage 3A, non-small cell lung cancer. My second opinion was no Keytruda, but I did get in a clinical trial with Duke, and yes, I phoned a friend. That friend had a brother who worked at Duke Hospital, Cancer Hospital, and that friend was the actual person that I smoked pot with the first time. So this many years later, you see where I'm going here, right? It's kind of like a theme, right? Well, 2018, the big thing about this picture is, look at that date right there. What date is that? So I was in for a lung function test on 4/20 to make sure I had enough lung capacity to have surgery to remove that invader that was inside of me. I just thought it was kind of funny that day, right? So I'm like, you gotta take a picture of me. All right, so yeah, July 3rd. So from February 28th to July 3rd, just hell, just all kinds of different ways and different things happening, all kinds of stuff. July 3rd of 2018, went for surgery. On the operating table, the doctor was Dr. Stinchcomb. I said, do me a favor, play Pink Floyd Fearless for me while you're putting me under. And he did. So I woke up, and that's me in the second picture there. They had a tube that they put in between your ribs to float your stuff, float your innards, so they can cut out that one piece of lung, right? That tube was the most painful part of the whole thing. And I'm a grown man, and I was in absolute agony right there, because that tube, the nerve endings is just ridiculous right in that area, right? So it was bad. But I came through it, and yes, they started me on opioids. During this whole trip, I was presenting 2-minute videos on LinkedIn to share my story, because I wanted to share this with everybody who's going on, all these things. Lo and behold, somebody saw all this and said, I'm gonna give you FICO, so that's what's in my hand right there. So she gave me full extract cannabis oil for free, Angel, right, one of these angels. I saw your videos, I gotta give you some FICO. And I'm like, well, I don't care what it takes. I'm gonna take whatever I can to get this thing to go away. So yeah, I was taking FICO over that time as well, and that's also around the same time it started the dreaded chemo. So I haven't made it over to the poster there. Somebody had a chemo fog poster. Definitely want to check that out because I lived it. All right, so fast forward a little bit. December 23rd, 2018. This is my family. Washington, D.C. Anybody who's had chemotherapy, they understand. It's not like you take the shot, you're feeling the worse you are, and that's it. It's gonna get better. That ain't the way it works. That shit is cumulative. It gets worse and worse as your time goes on. So December, I'm on the last dose of chemotherapy, chemo fog brain out, feeling the absolute worst. We go to a modern art museum. There's an exhibit called Pulse. And a gentleman made an interactive exhibit. You walked up to a screen, put your hand on an Apple screen or something like that, had EKG sensors in it, took your heartbeat, transposed it into water. So you could see in ripples, Grateful Dead ripple, in the water. And that's when that's what I said. I bet you I can take my heartbeat and I can vibrate plants with it. And that's what I did. Yeah, so the whole April thing, I'm not gonna go through all this. If anybody wants to know the actual treatment that I did, there it is. I can give it to you later if you want or whatever have you. That's the whole treatment stuff. And that became the Human Connection, THCX. Why not, right? I mean, it's brilliant if you think about it. I think the human connection with the plant world, right? It's the human connection with the plant world. We're all one. They were here much longer than us. Plants were here millions of years before us. So they evolutionary have some better directional traits that we could probably learn from, right? So yeah, the Human Connection was born in February of 2018. This was my first prototype. I have it outside if anybody wants to see it. I have it at my booth there. So I decided first to go underneath. So I got a vibration speaker, which is not just an audible speaker, it's a transducer. It's a linear transducer. This is one right here. And I recorded my heartbeat and I tested it out, and those are my seeds that I got. And I ran it for the whole summer. See if it's playing or not. Now, that's not my heartbeat. My heartbeat doesn't beat that slow. That's just a sample one. But that's kind of what I was going after. I'm gonna germinate my seeds in some vibrating water, and then once they actually pop, I'll continue to vibrate them from underneath, vibrating the actual soil itself. Okay. That's my actual heartbeat. And granted, I was not a grower. Last time I grew, like I told you, it was way back, right? So I'm just starting kind of fresh and everything. This was my test plot, which was a 4x8 tent that I had in my little lab in the basement under my house. North Carolina, right? Yeah, it's all legal. Ask me if I care. Ask me if I care. I didn't care. This is my medicine. This is, I'm cultivating my medicine that's tuned to my body using my biometrics. You can't get more craft than that, can you? Let me think about it. All right, so on the right is the device, which again, this is a prototype grid. The newer ones are much more than this. But yeah, I saw a marked difference in the height after they grew for a little while. And I've got too many slides, so I can't stop on every one of them. Okay, so I'm just kind of showing you that's the way that I tested it. This was my first results. And okay, so this one was vibrated, this one wasn't. It's not a lot of difference. It's not a big difference there. But to a guy who's trying to live, and he creates this thing that he believes is helping him to live, directionally, this is the right direction, right? Bar none, right? All right, so what did I do? Well, I started scouring the internet. Anybody know what thigmomorphogenesis is? I know you guys do. A couple of the guys I work with are raising their hands. Yeah, thigmomorphogenesis was a term that was coined by Jaffe back in 1973, and it's a Greek word. It's broken down in 3 pieces: thigmomorphogenesis. Thigmo meaning touch, morpho meaning change, and genesis, of course, is creating something new. So yeah, that's a real term, and you can see all the studies that I started to compile in 2020. And I said, you know what? All of these people, they're all doing this with audible sound, and some of the nurseries would have a brush that brushed over seedlings to kind of harden them. But I knew that there's something probably a little deeper that I could go after here. So, yeah, I just started compiling data, started talking with some of these people. Ratish Ghosh was one of them. He really helped me out. Mechanical stimulation, so that's the term of what we're doing here at SIU, again, with your guys' help. I thank you so much I live 5 miles from NC State University, and I went to them when Dean was there, and they wouldn't listen to me, right? Stigma, right? But here you guys are, and I can't thank you enough for this. So yeah, mechanical stimulation, a promising alternative for sustainable agriculture practices. I had a conversation with Ratish, and yeah, plants can memorize what you're feeding them. So why not try and epigenetically change that for future generations? It's a big bad world out there. The wind's getting worse, the rain's getting worse, all these things, the heat, all of these things. Why not try to prime them without using chemical inputs, right? Yeah, future perspective. I'm not going to read all these, but if you wanted to read them, they're there. Okay, another guy. Another really smart dude back in the 1800s, Sir Bose. This guy said, you know what, plants can talk to us, and they can show us vibrations, and he built the Crescograph back in whatever, 1800s, and it used smoke in this chamber that he used to measure plant responses to vibration and other inputs. But because he was Indian, the UK, whatever, society of whatever have you, they just squashed it. They just didn't want to bring it to the forefront, right? So another guy, way before his time. Okay, there's my best man over there, Matt Gunther. January 21, he was my first customer, and he's here today. He's going to be presenting later on. He's been with me on this whole journey. Thank you so much, Matt. Back when I was growing up, I went to a lot of Native American stuff, so I knew what a loom was. So I built a loom to make this device, make this net, this scrod, if you want to call it that, trellis, whatever you want to call it. And so yeah, I made a loom that I can customize different sizes. This is a small one. It's got little feeders that go down to the soil, so it's got some extra juice if it needs it. So yeah, and then I started selling them, and Matt bought a couple of them. He's been using them for a couple of years now, so thanks again, Matt. And yeah, just a couple videos. Now watch that one closely. It's coming. Boom. Saw that, right? See that seed pop open? I'm not saying that was all what I was doing, but it's pretty cool that I actually captured that. You know what I mean? Like, that's a 1 in a million shot right there. But yeah, I mean, I was using vibration as a means to kind of break through the seed hole, right? Sonication. Right? Yeah, so, did I go too far? Okay. All right, so goals. And again, I'm a college dropout. I didn't make it through college. Right? This is my first time. I think I've sat in a room like this maybe once or twice in my entire life, right? So this is such an honor for me to be here. But some of the things that I've been reading about are right here. You know, you're going to get increased secondary metabolite production, improved strength and shape of the shoots. I've got a sample out there, A versus B, same mother. It's clear as day, the difference in the structure of the plant as well as the root mass. It's just clear as day. Thigmoprime young plants, Matt's been doing that for a long time. Potential IPM, there's a lot of people over in Italy that are testing substrate vibration to interrupt the communication signals between insects, female and male, so they're not going to be able to procreate. And so he's found some certain hertz to interrupt that signal between mating balls. Pretty cool stuff, right? Yeah, increased yield in less area. Most of what I've tested anyways, they're smaller, like they're dwarfed. You know, because it's like you're blowing wind at them, but it's artificial wind, right? So you're kind of telling them, hey, I gotta be short and stout and strong, because I'm gonna get blown over if I don't grow this way, right? And sustainability efforts. So I always get a kick out of this. I'm really heavy on LinkedIn. You see all these MSOs and these big people, and they've got this long ass stretch of nylon netting that's over the top of everything. That is so unsustainable. They're gonna get done with their harvest, they're gonna rip that off, they're gonna damage their coals, they're gonna damage their trikes, they're gonna throw it in the garbage. Right? So if we can change the structure of the plant so that it's stronger and doesn't get overweighted and fall over because of the heavy coals, wouldn't you like to do that without a plastic net? Hell yeah. Yeah, and also I think there's some other pieces that some of the other guys talked about as well for improvements. Okay, this is from Ritesh Ghosh's paper there, and like I said, you know, they've got a moving beam that goes over some, they've got a roller, curvature, growth chamber with a speaker, because speaker is vibration, right? I mean, I forget the gentleman's name there, was it Brian? Yeah, the guy from the lighting manufacturer. I mean, sound is vibration, right? I mean, energy is vibration. So yeah, speaker. Well, and again, one of the other guys mentioned, the further you get away from that point, I think it was probably him still, the more, it becomes less efficient. And that's why I chose aluminum, by the way, because aluminum is a very dense material. You send vibration through this thing, it goes a long freaking way, you know? And it's aluminum, it's a nice metal, right? It's not a real nasty metal, right? And then a sonicator, which again, I've got one of these. This thing costs about $2,000 or $3,000. You can buy my product for like $200 or $300. It does the same thing, and you can program it to whatever sound input you want. So that's another thing, is a lot of people say to me, why don't you just get a vibrating table, use a vibrating table. A vibrating table uses a shaft and a counterweight. I'm a mechanical guy, mechanical engineering guy. Uses a shaft and mechanical weight that spins. So when you get that thing going to create the vibration, that's great. But try and get it to stop, or try and get it to change direction. That's hard to do. So that's why a linear transducer is much more adept to changing those vibrations in a linear form rather than a rotation. Okay, but the one thing you didn't say in here is what I got, because I got the tool. I'm the tool guy, right? Yeah, so this is my method right here. So I have a surface transducer. This particular model has speakers as well. You don't have to use the speakers. You can turn them off if you want, but they are available. And it uses a transmitter plate, which is that guy right in the center there. The structure is the actual grid, which if you think about it in biomimicry words, it's a spider web. Spider sits in the middle of a spider web, you know, reading vibrations from its prey. This is just a reverse biomimicry kind of deal, right? It physically touches the plant, it's haptic. We do have another model out there for mother wounds to vibrate mothers. So before you cut the clones, you give it a shot of vibration for a little bit of time, and therefore you're passing on those stress responses from the mother to the clone, and therefore the clone is hardened and primed when you bring it out again, wherever you're going to bring it to. And that could be even if you're transporting it from, you know, one part of the states to another, right? You're priming plants. You're hardening the plants. Does that make sense? Canopy management, you can use it as a scrog. Row crop, I talked a little bit about that, and this is an individual one. Another nice feature is this for the home grower, is that you can use it as a drying rack, because after the actual job is done, you cut the end of the stem underneath it, you take that whole plant and everything, take it over your drying room, turn it upside down, and hang it. So now you're not messing with your coals, you're not messing with your trikes, you're not trying to pull off this scrog that's like all over the place. It's a reusable aluminum trellis, right? I mean, okay, so other pictures from Ritesh Ghosh's paper. I mean, that blew me away right there, right? That's like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. Going back to pro science, that's pro science. I heard that so many times. Guess what? I don't give up, right? I'm gonna beat fucking cancer. I'm not gonna give up, man, you know? So that's it. Yeah, thanks. So okay, I have this one outside here. This one here was not vibrated. and this one was. A couple notable differences. You can tell the root masses are completely different, but I think one of the more important things is the actual structure, which again, Brian talked about for light penetration and everything like that. This one here, it's more of a V shape. You see how it's kind of like straight and like a V? But this one is actually, looks like a bud, looks like a dried bud. It's kind of like a U shape. So those heavy colots that get up here, they're gonna withstand the weight better than this one. In fact, this one's snapped down here, right? So, and again, this goes back to, if you can epigenetically alter this for future generations to have this trait, then you're not gonna need some of that weight supporting material. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Oh, is that 5 minutes?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So yeah, another example. This was out of Matt's. Same clone, same mother. Now I know there's always things that are going to be a little different than one versus the other. But that's why I'm here. That's why Buck and Jose and all of these guys, they're allowing me to test this in their facility. And I purposely did not go over to the posters to see what it was supposed to be results were, because I wanted to finish this first. I didn't want to become jaded, right? Yes, another picture, faster recovery after damage, drought, all kinds of stuff. Okay. All right, this is in Matt's test facility. Hemp. I mean, there it is right there, right? You know it. So again, I just, I can't thank you guys enough. This has just been such an experience. And yes, I say thank you to cancer because without it, I wouldn't have done this, but fuck you at the same time. Thank you very much. The rest of this, it's there. Oh yeah, say no to GMO, yes to VMO, right? Not genetically modified organism, a vibrationally modified organism. Right now, you guys are all vibrationally modified because of me.
Do a therapist?
Sorry?
You know, in good vibrations that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I probably should. I probably should give them that. Yeah, any questions?
Yeah, we have time for a couple of questions. If I have questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
How does when this comes up and you're thinking about what's the input, your heartbeat, what vibration hertz, how does your mind go to like have you played them Beach Boys Good Vibration?
Yeah, great point. I mean, the possibilities are endless, right? But there are studies out there by like Heidi Appel and Rex Colcroft who used caterpillar chewing, which is a great one that I like to use because if I mechanically stimulate that plant to think it's being eaten, it's going to release some hormones, which I believe would be secondary metabolites, right? And they're tricking it into doing that. I use my heartbeat, it seemed to work for me. Matt uses 90s Wu-Tang, right? I mean, you use 90s stuff. In the facility here, we've got 15 minutes, 200 hertz, 45 minutes off. 15 minutes on, 45 off. Now, I chose that because of the other gentleman that I met on the way here, Eric Brania. He's done some testing at 200 hertz. I don't have the magic recipe. If you're an entrepreneur, that's a subscription right there. How old is the plant? What are you going to try to do? Oh, you want that? Here, buy the product, and then here, monthly subscription. You want that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that answer. I just don't know that answer.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, let's thank our speaker.